Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 36 in the crunchy Cobra Jet series, also known as Slither. Now in the previous video, I went over the details that I could find on the various doors that I have available. I had 2 aftermarket doors and 2 original doors. The idea being, I wanted to show you what you could look out for as you are working on your project. So if you have a problem with a door or an issue with an original door that leads you to save that door, that's great. If you can't save that door, I wanted to show you some of those details and what to look out for with the various stampings that are out there. So with that said, I want to work on the driver's door on the crunchy Cobra Jet. The plan is at this point to use the dynacorn door that I have available. I do have the 70 door, but it needs some work done to it, and the original door for this car is just too far gone to save. So I'm going to try to do some work on the dynacorn door, maybe some adjustments, and I want to show you some of those details that may help you with your project. Now, this of course is all dynacorn as far as the parts go, except for the plates on the inside. These, as many of you should know, or may know, are removable. And with this side, it came with a replacement or a new dynacorn plate. And I want to point out that the dynacorn replacement plate is a little thicker, but otherwise it does pretty much the exact same thing. So if you want to use that one, you can. I'm trying to use the original one just because I know that it's good and the threads work. Now, when I put this in here, you kind of got to wiggle it in a little bit, but it goes in fairly easily. It's got a little, on the front here there is a hook that it goes into, and on the back there's a vertical hook that it drops down onto. The problem you run into on these is whether or not you have full range of motion, because you need to be able to adjust the door up and down and back and forth, and some of that is part of this hinge plate. So this one I can move up, and I pretty much hit the top of the threads against the inside of the opening, and coming down I run out of room. So there's a couple ways I can deal with this. I can take and notch this plate actually up here so I could bring it down slightly. That'll give me a little bit of room, or the hook that wraps around, I could trim it as well and change the dimensions so that it'll move. Either way I have to give up some material. But that is a concern, especially I've seen this before on other cars, that you put something on, or an aftermarket hinge in particular, and the hinge won't move around enough, and sometimes you even have to open up the holes on the hinge just to make them line up with the opening. So at this point I may trim this slightly so that I can get it to come down, but I already know that I need the door to come up more than anything else. So I think I'm good on this one. On the lower one, it seems to have a good range, but again it's a little high. When I bring it up, I do notice that it's hitting before I reach the top of the openings. So again, I may end up taking and just notching it so that it can come up some more. Take out some off the bottom of the notch. So little details like this are what you need to look for whenever you're trying to put your project together. There's also a little bit that I need to do on the door. Let me show you that. So what I did is I put the bolts in the plate and I move it around to see how much actual movement I have. Now these, the idea is you can move the door in and out more than anything else. There's a little bit of play up and down, but not much. Your focus is in and out, because that will index the door. So if you're working on one of these and you're trying to get the door to line up, you can pivot the door like this with these 2 hinges. You can move it in and out as well, but you're limited up and down. Most of that takes place on the B-pillar itself. This plate I think has good movement all the way around, but I noticed this upper plate is a little bit off. So this one, when I move it, I'm finding that this upper bolt is dragging across the top edge of the hole before this one hits. So that hinders some of the movement. I may take a rotary file and clean out this edge slightly just to give full range of motion. Otherwise, this seems to move just fine. Just a little tight up here at the top. Pretty minor, but I'll take care of that. Now I'll address these issues and rehang the door so that I can see if I can get it to line up the way that I want. Okay, I've made my adjustments to the openings, and this now has more clearance to go up, which I needed that to clear the bottom, of the rocker panel, or the top of the rocker panel. This one also now has more movement. So I'm going to rehang the door and see if I can't get a better alignment out of all of this. So I've improved the fitment of the door. I had the fender sitting on here. I have to commit to what fender I'm going to use. This fender, the bottom edge down there is rusted up, and I can't find a patch like I did for the 68. I don't know that anybody makes those. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do just yet with this fender. I do have the gray fender back here, which is also from a 69. So that is going to work. As much as I would like to use that fender, I don't know what I can do other than cut up one of the aftermarket fenders that I have to fix this one. So anyway, let me move on. What I need to do with the door is still get it a little higher. So back here, the gap is decent. It's a little bit tighter at the bottom than it is at the top, but I've also got it sitting just slightly down. And the gap at the bottom is decent all the way back. However, the body lines aren't correct. And I've already tried moving, adjusting for the plates. I'm going to have to do some more with that and try to get those higher. Now, it is what it is. I've talked about it before. These stampings could be off slightly. I don't know, but I'll have to try to get this just slightly higher and see if I can't address this alignment. It's not much. It's very, very close. To the casual observer, they're going to go, "Oh, that's pretty good," but for me, it's not quite right. Also, at the bottom, I've got a great line on the rocker panel until I get right here. So somewhere between this section and this section, right? It's almost like it's bowed in slightly. I've tried a couple different things. There, if I set the door edge on the rocker, maybe you can see it a little better. I'm going to try to bow that out a little, take a block of wood and just dolly it and see if I can't straighten that out as well. So I'm going to take the door back off as it goes and see if I can't make some adjustments. So what I ended up doing was opening up the bird mouth a little more on the plate, and that allowed it to come up on both of these. I had these plates that came with the body pieces, but this opening is actually narrower than what's on the original plates, and I would have had to open these up anyway. So at this point I have good movement up and down, or at least up, which is what I need more than anything. But I want to show you this, if I can make a decent demonstration. I don't know. So you can see the gap right there, which is on the back edge of the door towards the quarter panel. That's not a problem. Come forward, I can't get the light to help me on this probably, but again, there's the gap. It gets tight right there, and then I probably can't get the light to shine far enough back up in there. Maybe you can see it, and then it opens up again. And there's a little bit of a low, or let's say a bigger low spot there, but this is that area that I was talking about that was in too far. So what I'll probably try to do is use something like a board, set it on top of this and hit it and try to see if I can't reshape that. But this just shows you how, like I said, that section is bowed in. I feel much better about that right now. It may still need a little whack now and then to get that just perfectly straight, but I found another flaw, and I'll have to deal with this as well. As I was looking at this bottom edge, I could see this looked odd right here. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's all wrinkled. And then I started looking at it this way. And it appears that that was stamped, maybe hit twice or something. I don't know. But there is a gap between my straight edge and that bottom of the door. So that is something I'm going to have to weld and build that up, unfortunately. But it's not going to affect the fitment at the moment, so I'm going to put the door back on and we'll have another look at it. Alright, so I'm getting closer. I have the body lines pretty much right where I want them, and I don't expect them to be perfect. There will be filler involved, we all know that. You have to make your transitions and everything. The gap a little bit tighter at the bottom than it is at the top, not a whole lot. And if I have to, as you all know, I will either separate this slightly and move that edge, that overlap in, and re-weld it just to make the gap even better. But overall, that's not bad. Up front here, what I found is now that I've adjusted it and was able to get the door to come up, it's actually hitting right here. So when I push the door to try to get it to close, it bounces off of that corner. So that means I'm going to have to address that. Otherwise, the bottom edge is really close. Now I know, as I mentioned, there's some problems back there where it was stamped weird. And you know, I've done this before, again, where I've cleaned up an edge, added material, and if I need to do that, I will. I already know I'm going to have to weld up that bad spot anyway, and it won't take much to add some more material here to really make it line up nice. But overall, I think that's pretty good for a start. So what I want to do is get the put the gray fender on, and then I'll start working on the other side. Alright, we already know the status on this door, but I want to show you something. I made a mistake. You know, this has left written on that upper hinge, and for some reason I tried to install that on the opposite side, and I had that side on the driver's side. The shape is just a little bit different, but it didn't change anything. I swapped the hinge out, everything bolted up just like it should, and it still functioned the same way. So I had to go back honestly and look at my old video to verify the shape of this, and I'll show you why on the other side. So this is all in great shape. There's a lot of pitting. There's a lot of pitting underneath that hinge on the bottom side there. You know, Charles wanted me to save these hinges, and I'm going to try as best I can. He had blasted these and brought them back to me, and he brought me new pins as well. But the bushings and the pins on these originals are actually perfect. There's no wear on these other than the rust. So look at this one here. You can see this, how much of this is rusted off. And we talked about weld building this in just to get it back into shape. And I may end up doing that because these hinges, I mean, they're not cheap to buy these, but the function of these is still fine, other than something on the other side that I'm going to show you as well. So I did have to break these loose. This had some blast media or something inside of there, and there's some wear on this spring. Now, Charles had also suggested that these could be welded. I will not weld those because it'll take the temper out of those springs and they'll be worthless. But anyway, let me show you what's going on the passenger side. So again, this was the hinge that I had on that side, and the reason I was debating on why or what was a difference, and there is a subtle shape difference. So this comes slightly down and this corner is more pronounced, as in a corner shape, where this one is kind of just round. So that's the difference. But this was the dead giveaway. When I looked at my old video, the other one had perfect corners on it, and this one is definitely missing most of that corner from the rust. Now, this upper function, all that is fine. The pin and bushing, all good. Down here, however, I have a new problem. Now, again, he wanted me to use these hinges, and I'm trying to use these hinges. But this spring and these rollers, although they turn, when I open the door, the spring, the pocket or the hole that the spring hits against is enlarged. And what that means is the spring goes past where it's supposed to go. So when I open the door, it drops too far out, and that affects how this closes. So let's take a look at the door real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. The passenger side door from Dynacorn fits way better. I mean, the gap is really, really nice. The alignment is really, really close. I mean, I can't complain about any of that. And the gap at the bottom, really good. So this one fits better than the driver's door. Now, let me show you this. I'm going to open up this door, and you watch that spring, and maybe you can see it if I can zoom in. I believe there's a hole, or the hole is enlarged where the spring sits. So when I bring this back, let me zoom out back. Okay, I bring this out. Now when I try to close it, it basically is almost like driving it straight into a corner. So I can make it close, but it's not healthy for the hinge. What I had to do was take a screwdriver, and this is a magnetic tip, so it's pulling me around here. I had to take a screwdriver and push the spring part away, get it moving, and then I'm using my hip to push on this. It would allow this to rotate around. So I don't know what I'm going to do on that. I may try to take this hinge back out and weld up, if I can, push the spring over as far as I can, and try to weld inside of that hole. See if I can do that. But I may end up having to replace that hinge. I don't know. I should also point out one other problem that I have at this point, and that is these holes. So you can see the door is on plane with the rocker panel, but these holes, they don't line up. Like, I can't get a bolt in those. Hope you can see that okay. So I'm going to have to look at that and see what's going on. I'm going to try to take this hinge back off. I may mark these so I can see exactly where the opening should be. I may have to modify the door just like I did on the other side, but I can't complain about this, so I have to remedy that. So I have the back of the door kind of held in place with a bungee, and at the front here you can see just how much I need to open this up to get this to be able to use as bolt holes. So hopefully the plate, I can see it's already in that direction, but I'm going to have to open those holes up to make room for the bolts themselves. You see the top one, the plate is actually, the hole is a little bit high behind the opening, the bolt hole itself. So I may have to open that up a little bit as well. Now, I'm going to show you something else. I'm not excited about this hinge anymore, and let me show you why. I hope this angle is okay, not too disorienting or anything, but what I was showing you earlier with the door, when I would close the door, and I can't even do it there. Let me try something else. I can't put enough pressure to make this rotate without causing some damage. So I'm going to push that spring over. There. Okay, so I got past that first one. Same thing here. I'm bending the screwdriver, or flexing the screwdriver, so I have to push that over. All right. I don't see this working because I thought there was maybe the hole was worn where the spring sits against it. I went in the back and I picked up one of the hinges from my Mach 1, and this one is worn out, so I'm gonna have to rebuild this one anyway. But if you can see in there, I don't know how well I can pick this up with the camera, there is a flat spot at the bottom of that hole, or on the side of that hole, to where this spring piece hits. This one is intact. It is not worn out. The problem is, I believe, the spring itself. There is a groove worn into that, and I started looking online to see if anybody sells just that spring. I don't see that anywhere. Then I thought about, well, how do I get this out of here? Because this thing, I could put pressure on it like this. Hopefully you can see that. And it'll flex. Now this has got tension going two different directions on it. And so I can do that. But then what? The way this is designed, and probably the way I built it at the factory, was it would have had like a bar that clamped onto this thing and rotated it. Now this part is tall up here, meaning this part is taller than, in effect, this part. The way I see it, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, it could be either way. I guess it could go either way. I was thinking that it has to slide down to unhook this end, and that's why they have this longer section up here, but it also looks like you could slide it up. There's enough length down here as well. You could slide it up. The problem is, how do you do that without causing some damage or something? Because this has a lot of tension on it, and I'm not really willing to risk that. I mean, there's a lot of tension there, and I feel like if I even got that out of there, I couldn't get another one back in. So this hinge is going to sit to the side. Now I've ordered two more springs, or two more hinges, both lower hinges for this car. I'll continue to use this one as it is. I don't have much choice right now. I know mine is too worn out as far as the pin. I mean, there's all kinds of play there. This one, it's really tight. The pin itself is really tight. So I'll keep using this, and when those other one shows up, or the other two show up, then I will put those in. But I don't really have much choice right now. I thought I would do a quick test of this other original fender. As I said before, I do have, the original Cobra Jet fenders, but I need repair panels at the bottom, and these are here. They're not aftermarket, so I think I'm going to have to use these. The problem I'm having right now is that bracket right there, because it's not allowing the fender to shift. I have a pretty big gap right here. I know that when I had taken this and pulled the fender away and moved it back, then I could get it closer. So right now that is rust frozen, so I have to get that loose before I can really confirm how this is going to fit. In the meantime, I'll work on the door as well and try to get both pieces taken care of very soon. Alright, I'm fighting with this fender, and I'm also fighting with the original fender. Now, as I pointed out, the original fender, the bottom is bad, and it's got a big dent right there. So unlikely I'm going to be able to use that without cutting up some sort of aftermarket fender or something. This fender is an original fender, and overall it's in good shape, but what I'm running into is problems back here. Now, part of this could be that this part of the fender is out of shape, but my bigger concern is this gap. I don't know why I'm ending up with this gap. It's overall pretty good as I go down, but the gap just stays big up here, even with the original fender. Now, everybody knows I've built this whole assembly from my jig, and I've also test fitted everything with basically that fender that's out there. So this fender was kind of donated to the project, and I don't know if it had some sort of issue with it. Now, with that said, I have this fender. This is supposedly the original fender from my car. So I am going to put that on and see what it looks like. Hopefully it'll show me if there's any other problems. So let's see what that looks like if I put it on the car. Okay, this is getting bizarre. When I look down the fender to the door, that line is right on the money. Same way here, this line with the door and everything might as well be dead on. No complaints there. Come back here, the gap is better with this fender, all the way down even. It's a lot better. But you get up here, it's like, what is going on? And I also should point out this fender had something hit it on top, so somebody has put some filler up here. But I noticed also that all of the flange was pushed up. You can see it's how big a gap there is right there. So this fender's a little bit off, but amazingly enough, it's really close at this point. The other problem is it's high here. Now, the way these are designed, this little perch should be hitting that surface. So I don't know if you see the scratches or not. The other fenders were hitting that just fine. So this is a little bit high on the inside, and if I bring the cowl piece over, it shows that it's sitting high. I can't quite. Let me see if I can get that lined up a little better. Like, you can flex it up, and it's fine. It lines up good with the fender, but on the other fenders, I didn't have to lift this up so much. And this interacts with the trim on the windshield, so that can be moved around quite a bit. I'm really shocked. I don't know what's going on here. This is just weird. Now, again, I don't know what all was done to this fender. I think I'm going to try one more fender. I have the aftermarket fender that came with my car. I'm going to bolt it on and see what it looks like. Well, I don't like this one at all. So the holes in the fender feel like they're slightly off, and it won't allow it to go back far enough. And what that means is the gap is even somewhat bigger than what I had with the other fender. It's also sitting up here on top. Again, it won't push down, and if I push down here, it pulls it out. I can show you. I push down, pulls it out down there. So the shape of this fender is just kind of sort of there. Now, I don't know what this fender is. This came with my car. I have no idea, and for now it's just kind of a test piece. So I'm going to put the original fender back on and see how that looks. Okay, so I've shown you some differences between the original fenders hanging on the car and the aftermarket fender. And one of the things I pointed out was this, and that's where it makes contact with the cowl. So you can look at that and see that that has a pretty significant hump right there. Come up here to the car that, or the fender that came off the car, and that is just straight. Nothing going on with that one. And this one, which is the original that was on my car, that is straight as well, and in fact this is curved or bent up just a slight amount more. So what I want to do is I'm going to reshape this one so that it's more consistent with the other two, and then look at other contact points where it may be hitting. And it's not uncommon, they're not perfect, you know, the cowl isn't perfect, but you can see that's where, right here, that's where that's been hitting, and then this has also been hitting slightly. So I think that'll help with some of this. And I did have the fender on. I made some other tweaks and adjustments, and I think it's going to fit a whole lot better, but let's have a look at it. And one of the other things that I wanted to do, as I mentioned, was replace that hinge. So I don't know the quality of these. I think it should be okay. I found it online, and this was the company, or at least that's who makes it, and we'll see how that works. And just for reference, this was from E-Classics, and they sell those for $42.10 a piece. Alright, so the fender is much improved. I played around with the front here, adjusting that in and out until I could get the rear section to align. I also played around a little bit with the bolt holes. As I said before, sometimes these will interfere and you have to move things back and forth to get them lined up. Now, I was focused more on just getting these on the car and trying to see how the alignment would be, and not too worried about it being totally correct. With that said, this is currently the gap, and there's still some room for improvement, but it is much better than it was. The only thing I have is this conflict up here, and I think it may be more with the door than the fender itself. So I'm happy with that. I really am. I can push that in because there's no bolts in the bottom or anything. And again, all of this in this scenario is I just want to make sure before I do anything else that the doors will fit the car, the fenders fit the car, and then once I know everything is going to be, at least at this point, able to be bolted on, then I can take it off of the jig. So I'm not ready to do all the final work on this stuff. I just wanted to do a genuine mock-up and test fit and see where we were at. I know that I pointed out as well on this driver's door, this same situation right here. I talked about that. And if I push this fender in, it's a little snug at the front right now, but I'm confident all this will work out. Also, you know, this lines up pretty much dead on. There's a pair of pliers holding it because normally the trim would hold that, but this is right on the money as far as I'm concerned. And on this side, same thing. I just have this holding it because it would just fall down. There's nothing to support it. However, now I did that adjustment on the fender, and this is really close. So again, there can be a little tweaking here and there to make that work. So let me set the hood on, and we'll make sure everything clears. So this is the hood that Charles provided, and this is a very nice hood. Has a little bit of minor, damage up here in the front, which is no big deal, but it does not have the hole in it for the scoop for the Cobra Jet. So odds are I will be making that hole if I don't decide or try to find another hood that already has a hole in it that's in as good a shape. But there you can see the line gap. Come over here to this side, Same thing, really nice. And I want to point out some things. I know I had some people questioning, I posted pictures on Facebook and they were questioning whether everything was sitting right. So as you know, I use this trailer jig, and if I come down here just as an example and I measure that, it's around 17.5. I can't get right on it. Here, same thing, basically 17.5, maybe 5/8. I have to double check. I can't see it very well. Yeah, I go with 17 and 5/8. Okay, the other thing, coming off the bottom, or from the floor up, the bottom of the box for the core support, right at 30 inches. 30 inches. Up here, come to the corner of the fender. That's 49 or 48 and 15/16 to the top. This one, virtually the same, 49. It might be, I mean, it's within a 16th. Look at the corner of the hood, basically the top line there, 47.5. 47.5. So I really think everything is pretty good. If I set this up here, I don't know, 1/10 of a degree, maybe 12. It's going to bounce around a little bit. I think that's pretty darn close. Yeah. So there it is. Now, I don't know yet if I'm going to put the actual hood hinges on and try to cycle that or not. I don't know if it's worth it, but I think that I'm at a point where, again, I can take all this stuff back off, take the body off of the jig, and get it on the rotisserie. I think that's going to be the next step. I think. Unless I come up with something else to do. Pretty happy with that. Well, I'm at a good point right now. I have all the sheet metal that I need to hang in place, other than putting on the rear deck lid, attaching the hinges. I may actually do that and see if everything works, which I expect it to, because all the gaps are good back there as well. The hood, the fenders, everything seems to be lining up pretty close to where I want them. Now, as I said, I'm not ready to do all the fitting. I am just making sure that what I have bolts to the car. I still need to swap out that lower hinge, probably on both sides of the car. The ones that I bought, we'll try those out and see how they work, but at least I know I have them now in hand. And there's some other things that I need to address, pretty minor. There may be some welding and a few odds and ends that need to be wrapped up. But I think I may be close to taking this off of the jig. That is a major step, and I'm kind of anxious about that, to be honest. This car's been sitting or built on the jig as we see it, and the next step I think is going to be getting it off of there and putting together the rotisserie. And I will do a video on the rotisserie itself and the process so that you can watch that and see if you're interested in getting one of those. I will provide links to everything on that product whenever we get to that point. But that's really good. That's really good. Now, I want to thank you for watching my videos. I've mentioned it before on Facebook and on my live streams that YouTube is pretty disappointing, and I'm encouraging people to join me on Patreon. I put out a lot of information here. I feel like really good videos, and I'm getting support. I have had people join me this past week because I brought it up that YouTube is really not helping me at all, in my opinion, for what I do, and that's fantastic. I've had about 15 people join as far as paying, 15 additional people as far as paying patrons. I think there's 125 total on my Patreon account, and probably 30 or 40 of those are free they're just there to check things out. But to do more on Patreon, that would be fantastic, and that would help me a lot, because the stress of doing these type of videos and hoping that they get views on YouTube, and hoping that they hit the algorithm, and hoping all these things, and then it just doesn't happen. So again, I want to encourage you to join Patreon. So I want to thank my patrons who have joined me. Normally I have a scroll list of those people, but right now that list needs to be modified, and it's gotten a bit longer. So there's, I think, 86 actual paying patrons on my Patreon account right now. So I'm giving a shout out to them, and I thank all of you for being here. So if you have any interest in any of the other stuff that I demonstrate, whether it's a welder or tools or anything that I've shown, I have links in the description below, so you can check that out. And you can also follow that for Amazon and Patreon and welders and all that stuff. So thanks again, and until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.